Let's discuss right now about the right atrium. The right atrium can be studied under four headings, that would be the location, the extent of it, the features of it, and the clinical aspects. So let's go one by one. So let's start with the location and extent. The right atrium is located in thoracic cavity in the middle mediastinum. So what is its level? It is located at the level of right third intercostal space to right sixth intercostal space. So what is it a part of? It is a part of two borders and one surface of the heart. So what are those? It is a part of upper border, and it is a part of right border, and it is a part of sternocostal surface and base of the heart. Base of the heart, remember, is located upward and apex is located downward to the heart. So coming to the third, that is to the external features of the right atrium. Anteromedially, in the upper end or in the upper border region, there is a auricle, which is also called as the right auricle. Auricle refers to ear, and the characteristics of this auricle is that it is notched as well as it is spongy. It is going to cover three things. First thing is the root of pulmonary trunk, aorta, as well as the infundibulum of right ventricle. Coming to the second, that is the lateral or in the right border, there is a sulcus called sulcus terminalis, which is formed due to the internal muscular ridge called as crista terminalis. In the uppermost part of the crista terminalis, there is presence of what is called as sinoatrial node, which is the natural pacemaker of heart. Coming to the third point, that is the inferior, at the inferior part of the right atrium, there is a right atrioventricular groove or sulcus. It can be divided into anterior right and the posterior right. The structures that are present in the anterior right are coronary artery as well as small cardiac vein. Then in the posterior part, there is presence of right coronary artery and the cardiac sinus. Always remember that right coronary artery is emerging from right anterior aortic sinus. Therefore, from the right anterior aortic sinus, it will pass through the right inferior border of the right atrium, that is on the right atrioventricular groove. Then finally gets anastomosed with the circumflex artery of the left branch of the left coronary artery. Coming to the tributaries or inlets of the right atrium, they are the vena cava, that will be superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, and sinuses, that would be the only sinus, coronary sinus. Then veins, and the veins would include the direct veins as well as indirect veins. Direct veins, I mean that they are directly opening into the right atrium, which will be the anterior cardiac vein as well as the Thebesian veins. Indirect veins, there are so many veins like the great cardiac, small cardiac, middle cardiac. All these are going to open through the cardiac sinus. They are opening to the cardiac sinus, which in turn opens into the right atrium. Coming to the outlets or the right atrioventricular orifice, it is formed by the tricuspid valvular complex. Tricuspid valvular complex includes mainly four components. First would be the annular ring or the fibrous ring, and then below that there will be cusps or leaflets. Below that would be the chordae tendineae, and finally the three papillary muscles, that would be anterior, posterior, and septal papillary muscles. Coming with the internal features, the internal features of the right atrium can be divided into two parts, that they can be divided into the two walls, I can say more properly. That would be the smooth posterior wall or sinus venerum wall, and the rough anterior wall or pectinate part of the anterior wall. Then let's discuss about the smooth posterior or the sinus venerum part. It includes the openings of the vena cava, that is superior and the inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava opens in the upper end, while the inferior vena cava opens in the lower end, and the valves. Superior vena cava as such does not have any kind of valve, while the inferior vena cava does have a valve, which is also called as eustachian valve. There is a foramen ovale. It is the superior vena cava which causes the blood from the right atrium to flow into the left atrium. The blood coming from the superior vena cava will flow from the right atrium to the left atrium, and it is through the foramen ovale, which is formed by the septum primum and septum secundum. Coming to the veins and the valves that are present, here there is presence of Thebasian veins, and the sinus which should be present, that would be opening over here, is the coronary sinus, and it would have the Thebasian valve, or also called as the valve of the coronary sinus. Then the fourth part would be the intervenous tubercle of lower, which would be well developed in case of the quadrupeds except in the case of humans. And during the embryonic stage, it directs the superior vena cava blood to the right ventricle. Coming to the rough anterior part, or also called as the pectinate part of the wall, which will be located that is in simple words called as the anterior wall. It is rough because of the presence of the musculi pectini, or also called as the pectinate muscles. These are ridge-like muscles which are originating from the crista terminalis as parallel bands or parallel ridges in the right auricle. So now this ridges would form a reticular network in the right auricle region. As a result of which, the function of the right auricle becomes to slow down the blood coming from the superior vena cava. Then coming to the next one, that will be the interatrial septum. So what is its embryology? I have forgotten to discuss the embryology of the smooth posterior wall. Of course, it is, as the name itself suggests, it is derived from the sinus venosus. That's why they have given the name called as sinus venerum, and this one is derived from the primitive atrium. Remember that anterior wall is derived from the primitive atrium, or right primitive atrium, while the posterior wall is derived from the sinus venosus. Then coming to the interatrial septum, the embryology of interatrial septum is that it is derived from the septum primum extending upwards and the septum secundum extending downwards, and resulting in during the fetal stage there is a fossa developed in the right atrium, which is called as the fossa ovalis, surrounding which is the limbus fossa ovalis. The fossa ovalis is derived from septum primum, while the limbus fossa ovalis is derived from the septum secundum. Coming to the last part, that would be the applied anatomy. That is called a patent foramen ovale. In case even after birth, if the foramen ovale, which was present in the fetal life to allow the blood to flow from the right atrium to the left atrium, since there was no presence of lungs to supply to the left atrium, which in turn pumped it to the whole of the body. But since now the lungs is present, it should have to close, which if it is not closed, it would cause mixing of the blood that is coming from the right atrium into the left atrium. Therefore, the deoxygenated blood also gets mixed with the oxygenated blood. Therefore the oxygen capacity, or the oxygen delivered to the tissues, is very much less. So thank you for watching.